Hello everyone, my name is Omar Al-Subay and these are my partners.
Ray Rock.
Cody Paxson.
Today we are going to talk about the gas injection of AUR technique. We will provide a general overview of the three types of gases we inject or we use in gas injection, and we will list some advantages and disadvantages associated with each one. We will overview the current AUR methods, such as water alternating gas injection and half and puff. We will also have a summary of AOG's case study. But before that, I would like to talk about the recovery techniques. I will start with the primary and secondary. The production of primary and secondary recovery methods are 1/3 of the original oil in place. The primary recovery method helps us produce about 15% of the production, while secondary recovery helps us produce up to 20%. Moreover, primary recovery is a method where the hydrocarbons are being produced because of the natural reservoir condition, but the secondary recovery method is a method where the fluid is injected into the reservoir to maintain pressure. Some primary recovery mechanisms are water drive, gas cap drive, solution gas drive, gravity drainage. And some secondary recovery mechanisms are water flooding, gas flooding, or the gas injection, which is our focus today. Gas injection is one of the oldest techniques in AUR. It's typically the produced gas is re-injected into the well to maintain the pressure, and it's basically two types. It's either immiscible or miscible process, and I will let my partner Ray continue.
Okay, you can hit the slide. Okay, so you can inject gas into during a gas injection process. You can either inject it under immiscible conditions or miscible conditions. Immiscible conditions is the injection of a fluid into a formation and the two fluids' interfacial tension is maintained, thus the fluids are incapable of creating a homogeneous mixture. Miscible gas injection is the injection of a fluid into a formation in which the two fluids mix to create a homogeneous mixture with more favorable fluid properties. You can go back. Okay. So, the purpose of immiscible gas injection is often to maintain reservoir pressure, to displace residual oil from water flood, or to store environmentally hazardous gases within the subsurface. Immiscible gas is often ineffective when used to increase the oil displacement efficiency. That's why many gas injection processes or projects seen today use miscible gas. The injection of miscible gas allows the fluids to react within the subsurface. No, go back.
No.
Okay. Allows the fluids to react within the subsurface. The gas reacts with the formation fluid and decreases the the fluid viscosity and causes the fluid to swell. This increases the mobility ratio and the local displacement efficiency. Miscible injected gas significantly improves oil recovery and is considered a economically viable process. Okay, now you can. Minimum miscibility pressure is the most important parameter to determine whether the injected fluid will be either miscible or immiscible. Okay, so MMP is minimum miscibility pressure. It can be determined experimentally through the slime tube test, which we saw in the previous presentations. Wow, lost that word. But is really hard to determine mathematically because it depends on multiple varying properties of like formations. including reservoir temp, the composition of the injected gas, and the composition and properties of the formation fluid. And it is typically expensive to get a very accurate MMP. Gas injected practices typically use three types of gas to inject into the reservoir: produced hydrocarbon gas, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide. Before the concepts of miscibility, hydrocarbon gas was the main gas used in gas injection, and unless the hydrocarbon gas was like economically feasible to sell to a market or anything like that, it was used just to maintain reservoir pressure. But then after the concepts of miscibility were further looked into, companies switched from hydrocarbon gas projects to nitrogen and CO2 projects because they offer an increased oil recovery factor. One of the most common gases used in gas injection is CO2. CO2 can be found in large quantities within the subsurface, and if that's kind of close to wherever your well is, it can be very cheap to obtain. After the production is stopped at the well, you can store your remaining CO2 within the subsurface and not release it into the atmosphere. When CO2 is miscible, it offers these advantages and disadvantages. It promotes swelling of the formation fluid, decreases oil viscosity, and increases oil density. However, the disadvantages that come along with CO2 has a very high mobility ratio. Modification to the surface facilities can be pricey, and the cost of CO2, unless it is found in a natural CO2 source, like just available to you. An alternate gas used in gas injection process is nitrogen. Nitrogen offers the similar advantages as CO2. However, nitrogen can be manufactured on site through the air and by cryogenic separation. So if you have the correct separation facilities, your amount of nitrogen is limitless. Nitrogen is also inert, non-corrosive, and you can use less nitrogen than CO2 because the compressibility is less than CO2. However, nitrogen is limited to certain reservoir criteria. The reservoir criteria must be rich in light oils. The oil should have a relatively high formation volume factor. The oil should be undersaturated. The reservoir should be at least 5,000 deep to maintain reservoir pressure and achieve miscibility. Okay. Gas injection alone is a reliable and economically feasible EOR practice. However, combined with alternating waves of water, the oil recovery can improve further. This is called water alternating gas injection, or WAG. WAG injection improves sweep efficiency during gas injection, also increases the contact of unswept zones such as attic or cellar oil. WAG performance is dependent on reservoir heterogeneity, relative permeability, and wettability. WAG injection practices use miscible and immiscible gases. However, it is seen in practices that the miscibility gas injection for WAG practices is higher, or obtains a higher recovery rate than the immiscible ones. WAG projects typically employ a 5-spot pattern with close well spacing for increased pressure control. Some of the limitations of WAG projects include early breakthrough, injectivity loss, and corrosion. Okay. The next gas injection process we covered is huff and puff injection. Huff and puff is normally used in tight oil and shale formations. So the process of huff and puff is the gas is injected, as seen here, normally well beyond the minimum miscibility pressure, and then the well is shut in for a predetermined time period. I believe we heard it was 4 to 7 days, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And this is called the soaking phase. And then the production resumed. This is the puff phase. And the production should increase if everything went well. The following case study shows the results of a Huff and Puff project in the Eagle Ford Shale.
So we did the case study in the Eagle Ford Shale and the Bakken Shale. The universities believe that EOG, they used the Huff and Puff gas injection method, and the study was started in 2013 and is still continuing to 2017. In 2013, 15 wells were used this method, and from the graph it shows that there was an increase in oil recovery. From their data, they got a range from a 30 to 70% increase in oil production, and then also with these 15 wells, it was found that the response for after the injection of the gas, it was found that about be 3 months until you've seen the production response. And then in 2016, they added 32 more wells to the program, and it was found that they added 300,000 more barrels of oil at a $6 per barrel cost. And then now in 2017, they plan to add 100 more wells to 6 different areas in the Eagle Ford Shale. To do this, they added about $1 million to each of the existing wells that they did it to. But this process from here, for every dollar they invested, it produced $2 back out, so they doubled their profit from this investment. The Bakken, they tried this in the Bakken, but it didn't produce very well. But from the lab results, it shows that it should have produced pretty well, because when they did it, when they injected CO2 and natural gas, from the graph, it shows that there was a 90% increase in oil production from the core sample, and then on the right, it shows after several gas cycles that oil kept increasing with each gas cycle. So the reason behind that the Bakken wasn't very effective in the Eagle Ford Shale was because the gas in the Eagle Ford could contain the gas a lot better than the Bakken. But this was because of the reservoir complexity. The Eagle Ford, the complexity of the Eagle Ford is pretty uniform, so that allowed the gas to stay in the formation a lot better. And then the Bakken was pretty complex, that it just moved through the Bakken way too quick, and it didn't allow it to soak in during that soak-in time. It just moved right through, which wouldn't allow it to mix with the oil. And also, it was found that it depended on how well the well was fractured, because if the well isn't fractured very well, you don't get into the best productive rock, which obviously would increase or decrease your production rate. So I'll let Peter talk about the process.
So I'm going to talk about the vulnerability of the process. So I will talk about in 2 major aspects. First one is operational conditions based on the Eagle Ford field data set. Second one, I'm going to talk about effects of petrophysical properties on WAG. So operational conditions for the injection period, the injection rate decline versus time was simulated by the gas injection rate of 10 mm SCF per day, and the maximum injection pressure was 10,800 psi. As a result, the maximum buttonhole injection pressure was calculated at 10,300 psi, which is 500 lower than the injection pressure. The optimum injection period was determined at 9 weeks, and the injection rate of 10 mm SCF per day. So for the production period, the liquid drop will occur in reservoir if the buttonhole pressure is lower than a certain point. It's based on phase behavior. So from the PVT analyzed data set, the buttonhole pressure was found at 6,000 psi. So it's very critical to keep the buttonhole pressure above 6,000 psi. The optimum production period was determined to 4 to 5 weeks. Shut-in period. Shut-in period is usually the contact between gas injection and reservoir fluid. It's called soak. Soaking period is usually the longer the better. However, the longer soaking period, it will cost more money. It all depends on the oil price and the natural gas price. The pressure profile from the modeling work indicate that 3 to 4 weeks are a good time. So right now I'm going to talk about WAG, which I already talked before. So I'm going to talk about the partial physical properties. So first one is reservoir stratification. In highly stratified reservoir, residual oil tend to be staying in the layers with less permeability. So it's difficult to have economical gas injection due to high gas recycle rates. So the problem is gas tend to move upwards in a formation with high to low permeability strat, because the higher layer usually has the highest permeability and low density. The solution for this is to delay the gas breakthrough and decrease the gas-water ratio. The second one is relative permeability. Relative permeability is very important because we will run a reservoir simulator, which is contact three-phase relative permeability data. So you can determine the saturation, pressure distribution, and the viscosity of all phases. So it's very important. So we have used the relative permeability to determine those factors. So interfacial tension has great effects on relative permeability. So as the interfacial tension decrease, the relative permeability curve will shift upwards. The last one is wettability. Wettability is probably the most important factor on WAG. So it influences a lot of variables such as relative permeability, dispersion, capillary pressure, and electrical properties. So more oil trapping will occur in water-well rock compared to oil-well rock. So in WAG process, we want to oil-well rock proof system. So it has higher recovery factor rate.
To sum up, AUR methods are applied when primary and secondary recovery methods production is decreased. The gas injection, which was our focus, is one of the best AUR methods because it's very It's very reliable and economic visible. The gas injection is mainly 3 stages. The first stage is injection the gas into the reservoir. Second stage is shutting the well and wait the gas to interact with the rock. The third stage is opening the well for production, and that's it.